All right. Hello, everyone. It's time to talk about nutrition. This is, again, the Wellness Series with Jen and Nancy, and we have a lot to cover today. So,
Lots.
Jen, go ahead. Jump in, lady.
Lots and lots to cover. We're going to try and do it quickly and in a way that makes sense. So, this is our second video talking about physical wellness, because physical wellness encompasses both activity, going to the doctor, and the way that we eat, the fuel that we put into our bodies. So we talked about exercise, etc. last time. This time we are going to be talking about food.
It's one of my favorite topics.
Same.
So, why is nutrition important? Nutrition is what gives our bodies energy. And, there's a lot of how can I say it? A lot of the information that we've received over the years has changed dramatically. And there's a lot of fake news out there, as that seems to be the term these days. But I like to look at food as there's food and then there's junk. There's no such thing as junk food. You're either going to eat food or you're going to eat junk. And that's your choice and our choice, and we all have our temptations. I read something really wise several years ago, and it said, don't buy your food at the same place you get your gas. And I'm like,
It's a good rule of thumb.
it is, but it made me stop and think, and it's like, well, I still go in for a bag of pretzels once in a while. But anyways, getting sidetracked. So the American diet has long been referred to as SAD, the Standard American Diet, which is sad. And the research right now is showing that 88% of Americans are walking around with some type of compromised health issue. And a lot of it's due to what we eat, whether that's high blood pressure, obesity, arthritis, that's what we're talking about right now. And it wasn't always like this, but with the advent of genetically modified foods, which I refer to as frankenfoods, the quality of our food has decreased, and unfortunately the size of our waistlines and the rate of obesity have both increased. And people will say, well, what can I eat? What should I eat? What comes from the earth is your safest choice. If you can grow it in a garden, pick it off a tree, it's pretty certain that it's going to be healthy for you. When we talk about processed foods, we're talking about overly processed foods that a lot of times have been stripped of their nutrients. Things that come in bags and boxes. Things that their shelf life, this is one thing that drives me crazy. When you look at the expiration date on something, and that expiration date is longer than my expiration date, I'm scared.
That's a lot of chemicals.
It is a lot of chemicals. But diets made up predominantly of fruits and vegetables are going to be your healthiest. And we're going to talk more about some of the diets that are out there that are being promoted. And just as kind of like a little disclaimer, we are just sharing information with you. Any changes that you make to your diet, do so under the guidance of a healthcare professional. Again, we're just sharing the facts and the information, and we want you to be healthy.
Absolutely. And everybody, there's a great basis for general ideas of what is healthy, what is not, what is good for you, what is not. But every individual is different, so it depends on what you specifically need. So if you have questions, drop them below, and we can either guide you to someone, or if it's a simple question, we might be able to help out. So you can always talk to a nutritionist, a holistic health coach. You could talk to a dietitian. You've got options. So a general idea of kind of how to frame how to look at how we're fueling our bodies is, I always like to picture our bodies as a car. So if you go to the gas station, you're going to put the right kind of fuel in your car, right? Like you wouldn't put diesel in like a Prius. I mean, you shouldn't. It's not going to go well for anybody. Regular oil changes. You make sure that, like, if the hazard light comes on, you pay attention to it for the most part, right? If we treat our bodies the same way that we treat our vehicles, and we put the right kind of fuel in, the right kind of oil, when the hazard light comes on, pay attention. When your body is telling you, I don't feel well, pay attention to that. So diet. the word diet, I want to talk about this very briefly before we kind of dive into some of the specifics. In modern American culture, it's kind of turned into like either something to like shy away from, or like, ugh, something specific I have to do. It's kind of become like a strenuous term. However, the word diet itself originally comes from the Greek dieta, although my Greek pronunciation is probably not stellar. It comes from the Greek word dieta, which actually means a way of life. So when I talk about diet and I say the word diet, unless I do this, diet, which would be kind of how people think about like, oh, I have to eat this and I have to be restrictive and blah, 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 blah. The word diet for me is more of a way of life. The things that we choose on a regular basis to keep our bodies healthy and give them the right kind of fuel.
I like that.
Yeah, dieta. I like that instead of diet because it kind of separates the negative, the pressure restrictive kind of things that we often think about. So now that we're done with our intro and our disclaimers, let's dive right into all of the info. Let's talk about macronutrients. Macronutrients, macro, big, are things that we need in large amounts, and that's what comprises the calories that we need in order to function day to day. So let's talk about fats first. Fats are not a bad thing, and let's talk about why and how.
Absolutely. So the fats are broken into two categories, usually saturated and unsaturated. And saturated fats have gotten a bad reputation over the years. We remember the Atkins diet, right? No carbs, eat fat. Fat doesn't make us fat. It really doesn't make us fat. Anything we overconsume, all right? We're looking at calories in, calories out. If you want to lose a pound, you have to have a calorie deficit of 3,500 of calories. That might mean you exercise or move a little bit more and you cut back a little bit on what you're eating. But if you can create that calorie deficit of 3,500 calories a week and you're losing 1 to 2 pounds a week, that's the safest way to go. But back to the fats. Saturated are solid at room temperature. All right? It might be butter, unless it's a really hot day. My butter just goes and it could be Crisco. I know my relatives used to bake a lot with Crisco, fat in a can. Unsaturated is liquid at room temperature. That's going to be your extra virgin olive oil, your canola oils. But I want to say one thing. Coconut oil is solid at room temperature, but coconut oil is one of those healthier fats that you can use. Whereas canola oil, even though it's liquid at room temperature, if canola oil is made from genetically modified corn, is that the healthiest choice for us? So there's a lot to consider when you're choosing what kind of fat you want to bake, cook, or spread on your bread.
And remember, fats are not bad. We actually need fat stores in our body, or in sciencey words, adipose tissue. It takes the whole offensiveness away from it. We need fat cells in our body to keep all of our nerves lined, to keep our joints nice and healthy and lubricated,
and so to help us absorb the nutrients from fat soluble vitamins A, D, E, and K. I know a lot of people, they'll go have a salad and then they'll put a fat-free dressing on it, and it's hard for your body to absorb those nutrients. So maybe a hard-boiled egg or some salad dressing to go along with it.
Yeah, fats are not bad. You just got to pick the right kind of fat, which is why we're talking about. So saturated, there's polyunsaturated, monounsaturated, and all that has to do with the chemistry of what the fat molecule itself looks like. Basically, if you think about it in terms of, does this come from nature, is going to be a really good metric for balancing, what kind of fats to choose. So a lot of people I know shy away from butter because a lot of times we have the country crock butter that's not actually butter. It's just a whole bunch of hydrogenated vegetable oils mixed with a bunch of other flavorings. If you're using actual butter from a natural source that doesn't have a whole bunch of additives, that is going to be much better for you than anything that has been created in a lab because it comes from nature. So that's the key. And trans fats, those are the ones that we should avoid. They're not supposed to be in our foods, but they sneak in there every once in a while. So when you're reading a label, if it has trans fats in it, try and find a healthier option that has healthier fats included. Fats are not bad. you need fats in your diet.
Yes. One addition about the trans fats, it's a double whammy. Trans fats will raise your bad cholesterol and lower your good cholesterol, and they're again manufactured in a laboratory, and it's a cheap way to fry a French fry, and it's just not healthy for human consumption.
It's gonna gum up your arteries and your veins and your vessels
Who
and
needs
everything.
that?
You don't want all sticky.
Who needs that?
No.
You won't be able to see the bees buzzing around. All right.
No to trans fats.
Okay.
Carbs?
Carbs.
Carbs are another thing. They're not bad for you. You just have to choose the right kind of carbs. So a lot of what we're saying today I know can be really, really tricky to follow as far like access to good healthy foods. Should not be as tough as it is, but it is tough. Which is why we're here talking about what are good and bad. And I try to stay away from good and
Yes.
bad, but that's generally how they're labeled. So there are two types of carbs. There are simple carbs and complex carbs. Complex carbs are going to be the kind of carbs that are going to do the most for us nutritionally. Simple carbs, they have a benefit here and there, but overall we should focus on complex carbs. And what that is going to be like whole grains. So rice, millet, barley, quinoa is a popular one right now. There are different types of rice. Try to get like a brown rice or a jasmine rice or basmati rice. The enriched white rice doesn't do a whole lot for us nutritionally. So my go-to is always brown rice with lots of seasoning, or even like a grain mix. Those are really good, and they have nice little packets at the grocery store.
They really do.
So we've got options. So complex carbs are going to be from grains and from your starchier vegetables, potatoes, sweet potatoes, zucchini, squash, pumpkin, peas and carrots a little bit, you know. So those heftier veggies and those whole grains are what's going to be the good or complex carbs that we should be focusing on in our diets.
Exactly. Carbs that come in a box or a bag, not so much.
Yeah, like bread. I love bread too, and pasta. Those are actually two really good examples. So,
But they've come out with some really good Banza pasta. I
They
know
have.
I'm not getting paid for advertising, but Banza pasta is made out of chickpeas,
it's pretty good.
which is a great source of protein. It's still high in carbs, but it's a gluten-free.
But they're complex carbs,
Exactly.
and our bodies need carbs to function.
Yes. And if you're an athlete, you need carbs. You know, the carb loading before a marathon, it's still happening.
It is. So we were talking about bread earlier, and I know it's super easy. Grab a sandwich and you get like your white bread. You slap some stuff in between it, chat on that sandwich. So if you are normally a white bread person and you want to transition your way to like a healthier bread option, start with whole wheat and then move your way up to whole grain. And then you could do even like sprouted whole grain. Those are gonna be the progress of making it to the healthiest type of bread. And I say healthiest because you still have to read labels and make sure that ingredient list has things that you can pronounce on it. Because
It's true.
yeah, and we'll talk about it. We'll talk about reading labels here in a minute. But carbs also include fiber, and fiber keeps our GI tract nice and healthy. So make sure that you're getting plenty of soluble and insoluble fiber. We might need to do a special video on just fiber.
Keeps those pipes going.
It does, and you have to have both types in order to balance out what your GI tract needs. And usually, if you Google difference between soluble and insoluble fiber, Google will give you a good enough answer that you can operate from.
Absolutely. So on to proteins?
Proteins.
All right. Proteins. When we think, a lot of people think of proteins, they're thinking in terms of, that big steak on their plate. We're talking about leaner sources of protein, like skinless chicken, skinless turkey. Eggs are a good source of protein, but there's a lot of vegetable proteins. You know, and again, like Jen said, you can Google a lot of this. But vegetables that a lot of people don't think of being a good source of protein would be broccoli and sprouts and lentils and tofu. Green peas, one of my favorites. Garbanzos, quinoa, even oatmeal is a good source of protein. And one of my favorites is the steel cut oats. I really like those. But I try to encourage people to have a little protein with every meal.
Yes.
It keeps you fuller longer, just as the fat in your diet keeps you a little fuller longer. and then complement the rest of your plate with vegetables and fruit.
Absolutely. And you've got so many options for protein. Depending on what your specific dietary needs are, if you have any sort of like religious dietary rules to follow, you've got all kinds of options for protein. Fish is going to be a great source of protein. I'm a huge fan of salmon, tilapia. I like fish. But salmon is going to be one of those that actually has those healthy fats
That's a good one.
and those proteins. And so the only thing that I want to add is that if you are relying on vegetable-based or plant-based proteins, you have to make sure that you're pairing items together that give you a complete protein. So animal sources for protein are complete just by nature. Genetically, they are a complete protein. So when you're relying on plant-based foods, a lot of times you're going to need two sources of protein that have overlapping complementary types of protein. If you Google complementary proteins or complete proteins, plant sources, anything like that, there are a lot of resources out there. They're not all stellar, but it's going to point you in the right direction. Rice and beans is one of my absolute favorites. Rice and beans, because they each have different types of protein, and when you eat them together, you get all of the types of protein that you need, making a complete
It's
protein.
a little spicy, right?
Yeah.
Like it's, yeah.
Yeah, I just said protein like a lot in
It's
the past
almost
30
lunchtime,
seconds.
okay? I'm sorry, I'm getting sidetracked.
Lunchtime. We do love food.
Yes.
But yes, proteins are good. Same as fats and carbs. If you overconsume protein, you're still going to store that as extra energy for later as fat. So just like with carbs and fats and proteins, make sure that you're eating the right amount for your body type. And a lot of times what that means is paying attention to how your body feels. When you feel full, stop. When if you feel heavy after a meal, okay, maybe next time I don't eat quite as much of this. A lot of it is trial and error, but listen to your body. Mm-hmm. Listen. Your body will tell you what it wants.
That sounds good.
All right, micronutrients.
Go for it.
So we just talked about macronutrients, things that we need in big quantities. Micronutrients are things that we need in smaller quantities, but are still equally as important. And those are going to be your vitamins and minerals. And that includes electrolytes, which help keep us hydrated. So a lot of times sports drinks are promoted for retaining electrolytes. However, those a lot of times will come with sugars and extra chemicals, aspartame sometimes, that we don't need. So the best way to get the vitamins and minerals that we need is through a diet rich in fruits and vegetables, lots of colors. If you take supplements for these things, remember that supplements are not to replace a good diet. They are to supplement a good diet. Just think about what the word means, and that'll remind you, okay, instead of taking this pill, I actually need to eat some broccoli today. So your micronutrients are what is going to they help vitamins and minerals. They help transport things in our body. They help all of our different systems to stay functioning. And a good rule of thumb in order to keep a lot of vitamins and minerals in our diets is to make a colorful plate. So focus on those fruits and vegetables of as many colors as you possibly can, and then you fill in your proteins and your fats and your carbs with grains and other things like that. But focus on those leafy vegetables, those berries. That's going to get you lots of vitamins and minerals, which is also going to help keep you hydrated.
Absolutely. Our friend is back.
Yes.
So when we're talking about hydration, the rule of thumb years ago used to be drink 8 glasses of water a day, and they've changed that, fortunately, to drink half your body weight in ounces of water. So if you're a 200-pound person, try to consume at least 100 ounces of water a day. But it doesn't have to be that you're just drinking water. It comes in fruits, it comes in vegetables, it comes in other types of liquids, as long as those liquids are not full of caffeine. All right, and caffeine is, it gives us that little kick, but you got to be careful of caffeine consumption as it pertains to our bones. Jen mentioned electrolytes and how important they are for our body to function. Common electrolytes are sodium, potassium, and bicarbonate. And a lot of the sport drinks that are out there right now, they're wonderful, they're full of electrolytes, but I've noticed that the first ingredient on many of them is high fructose corn syrup. And if you can find a quality sport drink to supplement your electrolytes, that doesn't have high fructose corn syrup, you're doing yourself a favor.
I'm a big fan of Pedialyte.
Yeah, Pedialyte is
Pedialyte.
good, and I even like the what, Smart Water.
Mm-hmm.
Smart Water, Pellegrino, which is carbonated, but that has the minerals in it. But the fructose corn syrup, again, that's manufactured in a laboratory. That's something a chemist created, not a nutritionist, and it's to take the place of a natural sweetener such as sugar. I think he's very much a
He
fan of
likes
us
us
today.
today.
He does.
Hi, friend.
So, as far as an older adults are at a higher risk of an electrolyte imbalance. And common symptoms might be you get a twitching. Some people will call it like a restless leg syndrome. And weakness, but it's very important that you make sure you're well hydrated because it could result in a seizure or heart issues. So stay hydrated, especially in these hot, humid days.
Definitely. And if you are going to drink caffeine and trying to stay hydrated, caffeine actually dehydrates you. So for every ounce of coffee or caffeinated tea that you drink, you need 2 ounces of water. So keep that, it's a 1 to 2. So if you drink a cup of coffee, you need to have 2 cups of water in order to
great.
stay hydrated.
I'll remember that one.
Yeah, it's a good one. And not a lot of people know it. So there you go. Share with your friends.
Free information.
Yes. So let's talk about those labels that we were talking about earlier and why it's important to read labels when we go to buy food.
If there's one thing you can do for the health of your family and yourself is to understand food labels. And think of it like this. When you're reading a label, the first ingredient is the most in that product. So if the first ingredient says sugar, probably not the best purchase for you to make because that means there's more sugar in that product than any other ingredient. Try not to, again, the word natural is used so rapidly, and natural doesn't mean what we would like it to mean. When I thought of the word natural, I thought it's coming from nature, it's naturally grown, it's not treated with chemicals. And unfortunately, it's mislabeling, it's misleading people to choosing ingredients like Nature Valley granola bars. I used to think those were the best thing, better than potato chips. Not true. And again, as we get, I'm going to say older in my case, we hope to get wiser.
I'm on my way.
Got a few years on you. But again, things to look for on the label: organic, whole grains, and look at the fiber content.
You have a bug friend.
I do?
You have a bug friend.
Thank you.
I got it.
Was it our bead friend? I'm bugmatic. But again, reading the labels is really important. You know what I like? Is if you buy a vegetable, if you buy a bag of carrots, what's the ingredient on those carrots? It's one ingredient.
Carrots.
It's carrots. So again, reading labels, the fewer ingredients, probably going to be a healthier choice too.
Definitely. And things to avoid: high fructose corn syrup, corn starch. What's the other one? Aspartame. Don't do it.
Artificial sweeteners are not healthy for us.
No, not at all. So, along with reading labels, we were talking about organic, natural. So there are a lot of like buzzwords that marketing companies will throw on a label in order to make you think it's healthy and get you to buy it. It's not always the case. So a lot of things are labeled as diet or skinny or low or free, things like that. So like low carb, low fat, sugar free, carb free, fat free, diet anything, skinny anything. Anytime that those words are used, I'd say 99.9% of the time, it's because they've pumped it full of something else to replace what they've taken out that is actually far worse for us than they are. So, and I know like low fat, low carb, sugar free diets have been really, really popular in the past. However, think about that word dieta, back to that lifestyle. Sugar is also not bad for you. You just want to consume it in its natural form from fruits and carbs and things like that. And avoid artificial sweeteners. They are absolutely terrible for you.
They really are. I know a lot of people have made progress in what they're eating and drinking, and the diet soft drinks have really taken our culture by storm. But again, like Jen said, they're full of artificial sweeteners, artificial chemicals. And these are things that are created in laboratories. And my question is, and I'm not a scientist, but how does our body metabolize these things? And what we have found out in a lot of research is people consume the diet drinks hoping to lose weight and to do good things for their body, but what it actually does is it stimulates you to crave some more sweets, and you actually start gaining weight.
So it messes with your metabolism.
Yeah, it does mess with the metabolism. And some people, it makes them crave salty foods, and we go from that salt sweet, back and forth. So if you're going to drink a soda, and I know they're hard to find now, see if you can find one with just pure cane sugar on it, instead of the high fructose corn syrup.
A lot of times, not that I'm encouraging soda drinking, there are better
No.
options, but if you are trying to wean yourself off of American soda, or trying to wean yourself off of soda in general, a lot of times the sodas with the less chemicals and natural sweeteners are going to be found at your like European grocery stores, your sometimes health food stores. Those are going to be, or like stores that are specific to another country or continent, because a lot of times
That's true. That's a great idea.
stuff that's made in America is much worse quality than other countries.
It is, unfortunately. And as we're moving into the summer, the hotter weather, I love a huge container of water, and I'll throw some lemons in one day, I'll put limes in another day. Some days I'll throw a bunch of frozen strawberries in, just to give the water a little bit of flavor. And again,
You get some nutrients that way
gets
too.
some nutrients, but it keeps me hydrated. And I'm not putting chemicals into my body. We are bombarded with chemicals in our environment already. So the less we put into our body, the better.
Definitely.
Right.
And some good resources for these things outside of this video, obviously, because we are covering a lot really fast and we're just hitting wave tops, to kind of point you in the right direction. And as always, comment. Let us know what your questions are. Some good resources out there are myplate.com. Is it .com or .org? Google MyPlate, it'll pop up. So it used to be the food pyramid, and then it was the restructured food pyramid, but now it's MyPlate, and it'll show you proportions on your plate of what should be fruits, vegetables, dairy, proteins, carbs, things like that. And you can type in your information, and of course, it's not taking into account some of your additional health concerns, but it's a really good starting point for your recommended daily intake of things. If you are able to, talk to a nutritionist, a dietitian, holistic health coach, anything like that, and then some good movies or videos, documentaries to watch, Forks Over Knives, and what's the other one? Food Inc. Food Inc. Forks Over Knives. Those are really good resources to kind of explain things.
And Netflix has come out with some good documentaries. The names escape me, but there was one on there about health, and it was very eye-opening for me. Speaking of pyramids, Dr. Andrew Weil, who is a holistic coach, he has an anti-inflammatory food pyramid. And it's, again, if anybody is dealing with any type of arthritis or bursitis, decreasing the inflammation in our system is very, very important, and we can do that a lot through our diet. Blueberries, one of the best things you can eat, full of antioxidants and helps decrease inflammation. But check out the Anti-Inflammatory Pyramid by Dr. Andrew Weil.
Yeah, while we're talking about anti-inflammatory,
Oh.
let's roll right into a
Okay,
little bit
sounds
more
good.
anti-inflammatory info.
So, anti-inflammatory foods decrease inflammation in our bodies. But there are things that we eat, and I'm guilty of this myself, is white flour, white sugar, and alcohol that create more inflammation in our system. And right now with the humidity going up, I hope you're not watching this in the middle of December, but during the hot, humid days, people with arthritis really struggle. It really does a job. So, try to consume foods that are going to help decrease your inflammation.
Pineapple.
Any food, any condition, I think I mentioned this in a previous video, that ends in itis is considered an inflammatory illness. Arthritis, bursitis, gingivitis, and making some changes in your diet might help with those conditions.
Definitely. And so we've talked about.
Sorry.
Is our friend back?
Okay.
So pineapple is a really good natural thing that you can consume that can help with inflammation. And then nopal cactus water or tea is actually really good for that too. So we have been talking about certain diets that will be helpful for certain types of things. The two that are really popular right now that are beneficial are the Mediterranean diet and the paleo diet. As an anthropologist, the paleo or caveman diet is a little bit of a misnomer, but it's still a good idea. And it's eating things in their most raw and natural forms. That doesn't mean you can't cook them. It just means not eating processed foods. And then the Mediterranean diet focuses on a lot of those healthy fats from olives, olive oil, different types of cheeses, your avocados, things like that. And it's to balance those healthy fats and proteins in our lives with less of a focus on carbs. And that is incredibly helpful for a lot of people. But again, you have to base, your dieta on what is going to be best for you. Anything that is restrictive, all or nothing, cold turkey, generally speaking, try and avoid that, because that's going to be a complete shift in your day-to-day life, and those are really hard to maintain. So taper off of things, taper onto things. Pick one habit at a time. Go one day at a time, 1 week at a time. I've heard Nancy tell multiple people multiple times, it's okay to take it slow and to just work your way on and off of things. And you gave a really good example earlier.
Or just try to change one thing a week. Make one dietary change a week, maybe make one exercise change a week. Don't overwhelm yourself. There's 52 weeks in a year, and by the end of the year, you've made 52 positive changes, and.
And they don't have to be big changes. It doesn't have to be, I'm going to quit smoking today. That's a lot to take on in one day.
One change could be watching all these wellness videos.
Right? It could be, I'm going to smoke one less cigarette today.
True.
Or I'm going to drink one less soda this week. So they can be small changes, because small changes, micro changes, turn out to be bigger changes, and those become our habits. So don't feel like you have to change 52 large things every year. Do 7 small things each week. It's all about how you approach it. Do something that's manageable for you.
So, do we have time to talk about a couple more diets?
Absolutely.
All right. So there are a lot of diets, and they've been very successful. I'm not going to say the name, but if there are diets that you have to buy their food in order to lose the weight and achieve your goals, what happens when you stop buying their food? What happens when you start eating store-bought food and you start preparing your own meals? The research shows when you stop buying their products, people tend to gain the weight, and they tend to gain more weight than they lost. So if you can choose a program for yourself, and again, diet is what we eat. One of the Mediterranean and the paleo, wonderful. There is this, I would say the third in line might be Weight Watchers, because you eat your own food.
Weight Watchers and Noom have done a pretty good job of revamping and changing and adapting to make it a bit more manageable. They do promote weight loss a lot as the main goal, but having a healthy lifestyle is the main goal. Weight loss will be a bonus if that's what one of your goals is.
Sure, but we're talking about mental, emotional health as well, and not putting things into our body that are going to cause us
definitely
illness. Which brings us to holistic. Holistic and complementary medicine, they're a form of healing that considers the whole person. Body, mind, spirit, and our emotions, in the pursuit of optimal health. When we get sick, we go to a medical doctor, and they will treat the symptoms that will help get us better. But a holistic doctor will look at the whole person. They might look at what stress you have in your life. Have you made any changes in your diet? Is something changed in your environment that's creating this illness in you? And it's a whole body approach to treating an illness. Complementary professionals will work hand in hand with conventional medical doctors. It's not one or the other. I like to use both to keep myself healthy.
Absolutely. And it's about making the best choice for you. And there's a lot of really good farmers markets are really popular. They're gaining popularity, which is amazing, because you can get fresh produce locally that is going to be in season for you. It's going to be that goes into that complementary medicine. That's a bit of a traditional Chinese medicine take, is eating foods that are in season to help keep you healthy. And like we've been saying, focusing on whole foods 70+% of the time. We're not saying that you have to completely flip your life upside down. You can't eat a birthday cake at a birthday party. But if we focus on those whole foods and we
Yes.
focus on those things, and that's our predominant source of energy and vitamins, minerals,
Yes.
proteins, things like that. That's the goal here,
Yeah.
is to shift the focus into something that's going to make us healthier overall for the long term.
Yes. And through this pandemic, a lot of people have started going back to growing their own vegetables. In fact, our community here has a Vines program, which is volunteers improving neighborhood environments. And they're community gardens. And for a small fee, you can get a raised bed in these gardens to grow some of your own vegetables. And some of the people over there, they're all over our community, different, Endwell, Binghamton. They're very knowledgeable. They really are. They're very knowledgeable. So if you're apprehensive and you think, well, I really don't know how to grow anything, I think it's such a gift to watch something grow from the seed to your
Absolutely.
plate. So
Yeah.
as they say, what is it, farm to plate?
Yes.
But,
And all of these programs are making accessibility to healthy foods, actually genuinely healthy foods, so much better. And that's something that we really need to think about, is accessibility in the matter in when it comes to
Yes.
food. And a thing that people always talk about, how healthy food can be expensive. It can be. However, if you are buying the raw ingredients, and if you are able to buy the raw ingredients, you will actually stay fuller longer, giving your body more fuel than you will if you are buying something that's cheap up front, but you have to buy more of it because your body's not getting those nutrients that it needs. If you need tips on shopping on a budget for healthy eating, comment below.
please.
I have worlds. I think we both have
Yeah.
worlds and worlds of ideas on this matter, because we're
Yeah.
all on a budget.
Yeah.
And it is workable. Eating healthy on a budget is absolutely doable. You just have to talk to somebody who has experience and knowledge to help you out, and that's what we're here for.
Absolutely. All right.
I think that's it. This is one of our longer videos, but thank you guys for sticking with us.
Yes.
And next video will be social wellness, so we'll talk about that next time.
All right.
See you guys later.
Thanks for joining us.